Chapter 2. The Path to the Fairy Village. I stepped on a branch again, which cracked loudly under my foot. The sage, of course, heard it and couldn't resist using the moment to lecture me in his usual, cynically grumbling style. You think the paths just clear themselves for the likes of you? He grumbled without turning around. His voice, gravelly and slightly mocking, carried through the forest as if the woods themselves echoed him. I'm being quiet, I muttered, though I knew there was no point in arguing. Over the years of wandering beside him, there were a few things I had learned almost automatically. First, arguing with him was hopeless, and second, if he said something, he'd stick to it, even if it meant annoying the entire world till the end of time. Quiet? He asked, finally turning, and I froze because I saw that mocking smile he reserved for times when he found me in another scrape. Maybe you should leave your feet in a barrel for that. Before he could finish, I tried stepping back, only to trip over a root. As always, the spells worked in the worst possible way. As I tried to steady myself against a tree, I saw the bark under my fingers turn into sticky mist and slip away. Great. Another embarrassment for the whole forest. But we had to go. The sage, who had made me carry all his textbooks from his library since childhood, didn't even glance back as I tried to gather myself. We were on our way to see the fairies, after all. I never understood why the old man decided to respond to their request. He usually turned his back even on those who asked him to save their children. He had long held contempt for anything remotely human. And yes, he suddenly said, turning to me, try today to avoid any magical accidents. We don't need any explosive displays when visiting the fairies. I felt my face flush. It seemed he had dug deep into his memory of all my magical failures. Like that time I managed to summon a storm that hurled a dozen flaming sparks at me while I was merely trying to start a fire. Or the other time, when one wrong ingredient turned a piece of meat into stone. But those were still successful experiments. All right, I'll try, I said, trying to avoid his gaze. Hopefully, there'll be no need to mention my secret, I thought. It always hung over my mind, a burden I kept hidden even from the old man. The thing was, my blood wasn't exactly ordinary, though I didn't fully understand where it came from. Every full moon, my eyes changed color, and I felt something wild and predatory inside. It felt like drunkenness, but scarier. I lost control of myself and craved blood. A werewolf. Just my luck. But I had managed to hide it, even from him. Somehow, it seemed that if the sage found out, he'd either kill me or forbid any further learning. He already didn't trust me, thinking I was more inclined to wild magic and unlikely ever to become a real wizard. Well, I had other plans. Come here, don't lag behind. The old man's voice suddenly brought me back to reality. Finally, we reached the path leading to the fairy village. Even through the mist and morning chill, there was warmth and coziness here that couldn't be found anywhere else. Unlike other places we visited, the air here was filled with the subtle scent of herbs and flowers, and with each step, the ground grew softer. Tiny lights illuminated our way, candles burning in lanterns woven from branches. So, remember, the old man said, stopping at the last tree before the village entrance, you're just an apprentice. Your task is to observe and stay silent. Don't interfere. And if you start casting spells for no reason again, let's say it'll be your last magical act in this world. Understood, I muttered. If only he knew that I didn't need magic to get into trouble. That happened naturally. We continued forward, and I barely held myself back from staring at everything around. The fairies' home was almost weightless, woven from thin threads of plants and cobwebs that glowed with a gentle green hue. The village itself was like a mosaic of nature. Every corner, every tree, and every flower was arranged with an order I couldn't name. And there was a power here that made me feel as if the ground itself was breathing underfoot. The sage approached the fairies and, as custom dictated, inclined his head, but his eyes held no respect, only that same eternal sarcasm. I merely observed, pretending I was indifferent, though my heart beat as if I were facing danger. Ahead stood 3 fairies. One of them, older, with a serious gaze and a sly smile that made me feel both admiration and caution. She looked at me calmly, as if she knew all my secrets. Or maybe it was just her expression. Probably. The old man coughed, drawing attention to himself. I've come to hear your requests, but keep in mind, you're not the only beings in this world who live with pain and secrets. Some of us have long been disillusioned with this world and have the right to keep you out of our lives. She only smiled in response, but her eyes shone even brighter, and that look didn't seem entirely harmless. We were entering her territory, and with every word, every glance, she seemed to remind us who had the upper hand.